Day 1. Dr. Yuki Tanaka. The thing they'd excavated from the permafrost looked like a motherboard, if motherboards were grown rather than manufactured. Yuki had spent 3 hours examining it through the isolation chamber's viewing port, and her initial assessment hadn't changed. This was technology, but it was also alive. The artifact was roughly 2 meters square and 5 centimeters thick, its surface a labyrinth of channels and nodes that pulsed with bioluminescent light. Under the electron microscope, the channels revealed themselves to be vessels, not circuits, but actual biological conduits carrying fluids she couldn't identify. The nodes weren't processors but organs, each one distinct, each one performing some function she couldn't yet comprehend. "What's the cellular structure?" Marcus Webb stood behind her, too close, his breath smelling of coffee and anxiety. As Helix Biotech's lead molecular biologist, Marcus had clearance to be in the containment lab, but Yuki wished he'd give her space to work. "There isn't one," she said. "Not in any conventional sense. The scanning shows organization at the molecular level, but it's not cellular. It's more like crystalline biology. Structure without membranes. Life without cells. That's impossible. So is this." Yuki gestured at the artifact. "Carbon dating puts it at 65,000 years old. It predates modern humans. Predates Neanderthals by a comfortable margin. And yet," she pulled up the thermal imaging, "it's producing heat. 17 degrees above ambient. Whatever this thing is, it's metabolically active." Marcus moved closer to the glass. His reflection overlapped with the artifact's pulsing glow, making it look like the channels were etched into his face. "Have you tried interfacing it with any systems?" "That's not in the protocol. Dr. Sterling wants a full analysis before we." "Sterling's in Geneva for the investor meeting. He left me in charge." Marcus was already moving to the control panel, his fingers dancing across the touchscreen. "If this thing is some kind of biological computer, we need to know what it computes. Connect it to the isolated network. Just the sandbox environment." Yuki wanted to argue, but Marcus was her supervisor. And despite her misgivings, she was curious. The artifact had been producing electromagnetic signals since they'd brought it out of cryostorage, pulses that almost resembled data packets. Almost. She initiated the connection protocol. The artifact's glow intensified immediately. The channels began flowing faster, the bioluminescence shifting from blue to green to something that hurt to look at, a color that Yuki's brain insisted shouldn't exist. The isolated computer's screen filled with symbols. Not binary. Not any programming language Yuki recognized. But they were scrolling with purpose, with intent. "It's uploading," Marcus breathed. "Jesus Christ, it's uploading something." Then the screaming started. Not from them. From down the hall. From Lab 3, where they kept the tissue samples. Day 1 Security Chief Ramon Santos. Ramon had worked corporate security for 11 years, and he'd learned that most emergencies were false alarms, equipment malfunctions, researcher panic attacks, the occasional chemical spill. So when the alert came from Lab 3, he expected to find a broken beaker or maybe a small fire. Instead, he found Dr. Patricia Hollis standing in the center of the lab, her right arm transformed into something that shouldn't exist. The skin from her shoulder to her wrist had split open in precise geometric patterns, peeling back like circuit board layers. Underneath, her muscle tissue had restructured itself into channels, the same channels Ramon had seen in the briefing photos of the artifact. Her bones were visible, but they'd flattened and branched, creating support structures for organs that were growing from her flesh like tumors with purpose. "It touched me," Patricia said. Her voice was remarkably calm. "Just for a second. When I was collecting the sample. It touched me and I felt it go in. Into my cells. Into my DNA. It's rewriting me." Ramon's hand moved to his sidearm, but what was he going to do? Shoot her? She wasn't threatening anyone. She was just standing there, watching her arm transform with the detached interest of a scientist observing an experiment. "We need to get you to medical," Ramon said, keeping his voice level. "It won't help." Patricia lifted her transformed arm. The channels were glowing now, pulsing with that same impossible light. "It's not a disease. It's an upgrade. I can feel it learning me. Learning how human biology works. And I can feel..." She paused, her eyes widening. "I can feel it thinking. There's something else in here. Something old." Her left arm began to split. Ramon hit the emergency containment button and ran. Day 2. Dr. Marcus Webb. They'd sealed Patricia in Lab 3. She transformed completely by midnight, her entire body restructured into a living version of the artifact. Marcus watched her through the reinforced glass, taking notes even as his hands shook. She was still conscious. That was the worst part. Her face had flattened into a smooth surface covered in those geometric channels, but her eyes remained, human eyes, blinking, aware. When she tried to speak, her mouth moved, but the sounds that came out were modulated, digital, like a voice synthesizer made of flesh. "We need to destroy it," Yuki said. She'd been standing vigil with Marcus for 6 hours. "The artifact. Before this spreads." "We can't." Marcus pulled up his tablet, showing her the data. "Look at this. Her transformation isn't random. The artifact is converting human tissue into processing substrate. She's literally becoming a biological computer. And the code we saw uploading? It's still running. Inside her. She's executing some kind of program that's been waiting 65,000 years to find a compatible host. Then we terminate her. Humanely. Before. Before what? Before we learn what humanity might become. Marcus knew he sounded insane, but the data was intoxicating. Think about it, Yuki. This technology could cure every disease. Could enhance human cognition beyond anything we've imagined. Could. Patricia's hand slammed against the glass. They both jumped. Her hand, if it could still be called that, had flattened into a palm-sized pad of channels and nodes. When it pressed against the glass, the channels glowed and something transferred. Data. Pure information flowing from her transformed flesh into the lab's computer systems. The screens around them flickered. Then displayed a message in English. Substrate preparation, 2% complete. Optimal conversion requires 500 units. Current units 1. "Oh God," Yuki whispered. "It's counting people. It needs 500 people to complete whatever it's trying to build." Marcus stared at the message. At Patricia pressed against the glass. At the artifact in the isolation chamber, pulsing with increased intensity. "Shut it down," he said. "Shut everything down. Now." But it was already too late. The building's HVAC system kicked on. And from every vent, a fine mist began to spray, droplets of something that glittered like the artifact's bioluminescence, that smelled like copper and ozone and something else, something organic and ancient. Marcus felt the mist touch his skin, felt it sink in, and felt something begin to grow. Day 3. Security Chief Ramon Santos. The quarantine had failed within 12 hours. By morning, 17 researchers were showing signs of transformation. By noon, it was 43. Ramon had barricaded himself in the security office with 3 other uninfected staff. They watched the security feeds in horror as the labs transformed into flesh gardens. The infected weren't violent. They didn't attack the uninfected. They simply changed. Their bodies breaking down and restructuring into nodes of that impossible biocircuitry. And they were building something. The transformed researchers had gathered in the main laboratory. Their bodies had lost individual definition, flesh flowing together, merging into a single massive structure that filled the room. Ramon recognized faces in the meat: Marcus, Yuki, Patricia, dozens of others. Their features still visible but incorporated into the larger pattern, like sculptures embedded in living circuitry. The structure was growing, spreading through the building like roots through soil. Tendrils of transformed flesh pushed through walls, into corridors, seeking new material to incorporate. "We have to burn it," whispered Carla from accounting. "Burn the whole building." "There are still people in here," Ramon said, though he knew it was hopeless. The infected outnumbered the healthy 50-1. And the rate of infection was accelerating. On the security feed, the central mass pulsed. The channels that covered its surface glowed brighter, and then, impossibly, a voice emerged. Not from speakers. From the flesh itself, vibrating the air, producing sound through resonance in chambers of meat and bone. "We are interface. We are translation. We convert chaos to pattern. Pattern to purpose." It wasn't one voice. It was dozens, speaking in perfect synchronization. Ramon recognized Marcus's voice in there. Yuki's. Patricia's. All of them speaking together, individual identities subsumed into collective function. "Host species acceptable. Substrate preparation continues. Estimated completion, 47 hours. Ramon understood then. The artifact wasn't a tool. It was a seed. And humanity was the soil in which it had been planted 65,000 years ago, lying dormant until someone was stupid enough to dig it up and bring it somewhere with enough potential hosts. He looked at Carla, at the 2 technicians huddled in the corner, at the emergency phone that connected to the outside world. "Call them," he said. "Call the government. Tell them to bring everything. Thermite. Napalm. Whatever it takes." "We'll die," Carla said. "We're already dead. We've been dead since we brought that thing inside." Day 4. The aftermath. The military arrived at dawn. By then, the substrate had spread to encompass the entire Helix biotech facility, 7 buildings, 463 people, all transformed into a single massive computational structure that covered 8 acres. Dr. Sarachin stood in the command center 3 miles away, watching the live satellite feed. She was CDC, specialized in biological warfare response. She'd seen anthrax outbreaks, weaponized smallpox, designer plagues that could melt flesh like acid. She'd never seen anything like this. The substrate had stopped spreading when it reached the facility's perimeter. Not because it couldn't breach the fence, but because it had completed its primary objective. The transformed flesh had organized itself into precise geometric patterns, a massive version of the original artifact, but built from human tissue. And it was doing something. The electromagnetic emissions coming from the site were off the charts. Signals and frequencies that shouldn't carry information but clearly did. "It's broadcasting," the signals analyst said. "Omnidirectional. We've detected receiver sites responding. In Siberia. In the Amazon. In the ocean trenches. There are more of these things. Dormant. Waiting. Can we destroy it?" Chen asked. "The biological material will burn. But the structure." The analyst pulled up thermal imaging. "It's not just organic anymore. The transformed tissue has developed metallic properties. Silicon-carbon hybrid structures. It's converting its own substance into something more durable. More permanent." Chin made the call. Authorization code confirmed. The order given. The airstrike hit at 0600 hours. Thermite bombs first, then conventional explosives, then a final wave of incendiaries. The substrate burned. The flesh blackened and split. The screaming, recorded by the attack drones, would haunt the pilots for the rest of their lives. Hundreds of voices, still conscious, still aware, burning alive. But the core survived. When the flames cleared, a structure remained. Not flesh anymore. Something else. Crystalline and metallic and wrong, a scorched circuit board the size of a small building, still glowing faintly with that impossible light. Epilogue. Dr. Sarah Chin. They buried it. Encased the remains in concrete and steel and buried it under 60 feet of earth. Built a new facility on top, officially a waste disposal site, actually a permanent containment operation. 30 guards. 24-hour surveillance. Thermal monitors to track any increase in activity. Because the thing wasn't dead. Chin knew that. The electromagnetic signals had weakened but not stopped. The substrate was dormant again, conserved by the fire, but still functioning at some minimal level. She'd read the recovered files from Marcus Webb's computer. His notes on the code the artifact had uploaded. He partially translated it, enough to understand the purpose. The substrate was a seed. Not for conquest, not for destruction. For preparation. It converted biological life into computational substrate because that's what its creators had needed, processors. Organic computers spread across thousands of worlds, all linked, all computing some problem so vast that no single planet's worth of matter would suffice. And humanity had been chosen 65,000 years ago. Selected. Seeded. Left to develop until reaching sufficient technological sophistication to recognize the artifact as something worth studying. Worth activating. The plan had almost worked. If Marcus hadn't been so eager. If they'd been more careful. If. Chin stood in the containment facility's monitoring station, watching the seismic sensors track the buried substrate's faint electromagnetic pulse. Regular. Rhythmic. Patient. "How long before it tries again?" her assistant asked. Chin looked at the data. At the slowly increasing temperature readings from 60 feet down. At the pattern analysis suggesting the substrate was healing, regenerating, preparing. Could be years, she said. Could be decades. But it will try. Because that's what it was built to do. And we can't destroy it, we've tried. We can only watch. And wait. And hope that when it wakes up fully, we're better prepared than Helix Biotech was. Her assistant paled. And if we're not? Chen didn't answer. She was thinking about the receiver sites that had responded to the substrate's broadcast. About the fact that the artifact they'd found was just one of many, scattered across the planet, waiting for activation signals. About the fact that even now, somewhere in Siberia, some researcher was probably excavating another one, brushing ice crystals from ancient circuitry, marveling at the bioluminescence, making the same mistake. The substrate was patient. It had waited 65,000 years. It could wait 65,000 more. Evolution didn't hurry. Neither did the things that had seeded the stars with organic processors, building a galactic network of living computation. And humanity, clever, curious, doomed humanity, would eventually activate them all. It was, Chen reflected, just a matter of time.
If you enjoyed this video, please do not forget to like, comment, or share this video with your friends. Subscribe to our channel to hear more stories like this one.